What is up, guys? It's Kaizen here with daily content. Today, I'm going to be exploring the topic of attention spans. So, I'm going to be going over these two articles here, this one and this one. And yeah, let's get into it. Let's see what these people have to say. So, for this one, basically, this one's arguing that attention spans have really decreased, and this one's actually arguing the opposite point. So, what I would like to do with this video is to explore the points that both articles make. So I will read these articles so that anybody listening in an audio format can listen, and yeah, you can come to your own conclusion. I'm going to share my own thoughts at the end of it, and probably throughout it a little bit, just to kind of connect the dots. So alright, it says, yes, your suspicions have been confirmed by science. This is the one that is believing that the attention spans have decreased. So, a growing fixation on video screens, large and small, and the constantly changing images and messages these screens provide may be altering how our brains work. New research, this is where COVID has impacted a lot of people too, right? During COVID, a lot of people were on their screens a lot, and people have built habits from that, so that's probably still affecting society a lot, I think. So it says, new research is showing that younger brains can process information faster than previous generations, so they can transition from task to task more easily. And people who grew up in this modern tech era may be even better conditioned for the constant switching. But this research also is revealing a key counter theme. Older adults may be mentally superior in their ability to focus and learn due to a more resilient and long-lasting attention span. So this person, Tim Wu, a professor at Columbia Law School and author of The Attention Merchants, says, I think we're entering an era where different people of different ages have very different brains. That's the new generation gap, and some of the advantage goes to older people. Then it says, the prime culprit in hijacking attention spans is the smartphone. Americans, on average, touch their phones an astounding 2,617 times a day. That's a lot, according to market researcher D-Scout. Checking phones has become so prevalent that more than 40% of consumers said that they look at the device within 5 minutes of waking up, according to a 2016 survey by Deloitte. But you have to consider the fact that a lot of people, including myself, often use alarm clocks on phones, so that's not really fair to say that, but I don't know. So I'm not sure if that study's basically studying anything, if people are just using phones as a tool, is what I want to say. 50% of people said they check them in the middle of the night. What the fuck? Who does that? That would be so bad for your sleep if you do that. There's blue light on your screen. Even if you use a blue light filter, it makes your brain more active. So, beyond phones, video screens seem to be inescapable. They're in our living rooms and on our desktops. They're in taxi cabs and elevators. They're in waiting rooms and stores, even on gas station pumps. I haven't seen that yet. And they're in our hands constantly. The brain starts learning how to switch rapidly from one task to another, says William Clem, senior professor of neuroscience at Texas A&M University and author of Teach Your Kids How to Learn. It becomes a habit, but this habit conflicts with focused attentiveness. In a study at Boston College, people in a room with a TV and a computer switch their eyes back and forth every 14 seconds, 120 times in 27.5 minutes. Inability to unplug. As distraction becomes the norm, we start to crave it when it doesn't exist, which is why so many people check their phone screens even as they walk down the street. In one experiment, 94% of Chicago pedestrians using cell phones didn't see cash hanging from a tree. That's pretty funny. Just the presence of smartphones, even when they aren't actively being used, can affect our cognitive performance. That's true. Whenever I try to do any work that takes a lot of attention and I have my phone on my desk, it will distract me. So my method to deal with that and remove the distraction is to put my phone in a place where I cannot visually see it, and then my brain forgets about it. But if it's on my desk, every couple of minutes I have the thought and the desire to check my phone. So When participants in a study at Hokkaido University in Japan performed a task on a computer, those with a phone nearby performed more slowly than those who had a memo pad. That's interesting. Similarly, a single notification on your phone weakens your ability to focus on a task. Researchers at Florida State University found. Makes sense if your phone's near you. Those notifications may be short, but they can prompt task irrelevant thoughts or mind wandering, the researchers wrote. True. The inability to unplug also creates anxiety. Probably because people then don't work through their thoughts or through their problems and concerns because they're constantly distracting themselves. That's just my theory. People who constantly check their phones report higher stress levels than those who do it less frequently, an American Psychological Association survey reports. Stress, in turn, hurts our ability to concentrate, says Adam Ghazali, a neurology professor at the University of California, San Francisco, and co-author of The Distracted Mind. Older brains, better brains? Because they didn't grow up with smartphones, older Americans may be better equipped for serious thinking, Wu says. They are often better trained to be patient with complex tasks, he says. They can stand being bored for more than a second. That's true. Nobody likes being bored for even a second these days. Like, if you see people waiting for anything, bus stop or wherever, you'll see that they're always on their phone, right? They don't even want to be bored for more than a second. So he says, I think the generation that is at most risk are the millennials who have zero tolerance for boredom. This potential advantage in focus can help not only with accomplishing a task, but also with learning new things. There's a certain amount of boredom that comes with learning, and younger workers may have greater difficulty devoting their energies to tedious tasks, says a Harvard professor. Individuals in their 50s and 60s are quite adept at motivating themselves to stay focused. This motivated attention can result in, compared with younger adults, less mind wandering. Another way of looking at it, we see the merits of sticking with a task until completion, says Patty Seglio, HR strategist for Coolworks, which is a site that connects many older workers with seasonal jobs. Bob McCann sees this dynamic play out in his job restoring furniture at Iron Gates Antiques in Bluemont. I don't know wherever Bluemont is, I don't know what this says. Sometimes I'll work for 5 hours nonstop, he says. He attributes his ability to concentrate in part to a 26-year career in the Marines. One of the first things they teach you is attention to detail. I get a lot of emails, so I will take breaks and check on it rather than have it beeping and chirping at me every 10 or 15 minutes, he says. Those distractions, he found, affect young workers more than older workers. The young kids that I've worked with have got the attention span of an ant, says McCann, who has also worked as an executive at a technology company. They can't focus because they're jumping between things. You can't be successful if your nose is stuck in your phone all day. Slower processing, fewer filters. This doesn't mean that older adults have all the mental advantages. The processing speed of our brain starts to decline at an early age, around 24, according to a study at Simon Fraser University in British Columbia. To my understanding, this is to do with fluid intelligence, which does tend to decrease with age, but it's not really significant until somebody's around 35 to 45, 50-ish. And by that point, I don't think you need as much fluid intelligence. For most people's situation, they're kind of settled into a routine. They don't usually don't challenge their minds as much, I think. I could be wrong. And with processing decline comes a diminishing ability to switch from one task to another or manage interruptions. Older adults also struggle to filter out irrelevant information, Ghazali says, which is why conversations are often challenging in a busy restaurant. But while distractions may be difficult on the brain, focused activity, whether it's working, gardening, volunteering, or going to the gym, can have the opposite effect. In a study by researchers at the University of Texas, and the University of Alabama, older adults who stayed busy outperformed their less occupied counterparts on cognitive tests. Despite his job as a computer science professor at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., California, Newport lives a mostly analog life. He reads print newspapers, he turns off his computer at 5 p.m. and doesn't have social media accounts. By blocking digital distractions, Newport has found time to write 4 books, earn his PhD, write numerous peer-reviewed academic papers, and spend summer evenings listening to baseball games on the radio. A life defined by fragmented attention, he says, can produce exhaustion and anxiety. A distracted future. The ability to perform deep work, focusing without distraction on a cognitively demanding task, will become an important job skill, Newport says. People also seem happier when performing deep work, he says. Writing important reports or creating something with depth, as opposed to a task like answering emails. In my experience, people in their 50s and 60s often regain a deep work ability faster than younger people, he says. The big difference is that if you're older, you spend most of your life without that level of intense and constant distraction, something most young people have never experienced. But in the coming years, the demands on our attention spans will likely grow as technology enters more of our lives, from virtual reality to smart appliances. I think the more you primarily consume tiny bits of information, the harder it gets to consume larger pieces of information, says Wu, who attributes the problem to attention-hungry advertising models. No one is making money when you're playing with your grandchildren. The attention merchants want you clicking on pics of your grandkids, not spending time with your grandkids, because they can advertise to it. Avoiding this distracted future and saving your brain ultimately starts with you. It's important to examine your life and ask, is this really what I want to do with my mind and with my time? Will it all just get frittered away? Wu says, if you want to take control of your life and your mind, this is where you start. So then it gives 6 tips for regaining your focus. Number 1, grab a good novel. Number 2, play an instrument or meditate or write without interruption for 30 minutes. Number 3, work in the morning. Number 4, learn a language. Number 5, chew gum. What? Number 6, volunteer. This work in the morning one is particularly interesting to me. It says, in a study by the Rotman Research Institute, participants aged 60 to 82 performed better on cognitive tasks and were more focused when tested in the morning than in the afternoon. Anyways, that's the first article. So it says that attention spans are getting worse, and it gives some tips on how to improve your attention span. Now on to the second one. This one is much shorter. What's happened to our attention spans during the pandemic? Attention spans are widely misapplied, misused, and misunderstood. Attention spans are widely misapplied, misused, and misunderstood. The classic attention span research established that college students could pay attention for about 21 to 22 minutes. At minute 22, their brains would suddenly turn to jello, leak out of their heads, and disappear into the uncomfortable lecture hall chairs, never to return. But other studies have found that attention spans vary from 20 minutes to 42 minutes among children ages 10 to 14. Are college students really that much more scatterbrained than their younger siblings? My experience with university-level teaching would suggest the opposite. More recently, Microsoft sponsored a study that apparently determined that our attention spans were down to 8 seconds or less. In this way, we compared unfavorably to a goldfish who clock in at 8 seconds or perhaps more. The incredible shrinking attention span generated a good deal of hand-wringing and angst, not to mention marketing copy and speeches designed to keep this blink of an eye attention span for longer than now thought possible. Here's the thing about all of the above. It's all inaccurate. The 8-second study was not about attention spans, but rather about how long people tended to look at websites while browsing the web. An interesting factoid, but not about attention spans. And see, this is why, for basically any issue, you should compare both points of view, because the first one just took every single study literally, right? And then the second one thinks about it deeper. He says, how were these studies conducted? When you hear people say humans just have 8-second attention spans, is that really true? Do you just believe that instantly without actually looking into how they got the data? I understand that we're very busy and it's basically impossible to research and fact check every bit of information, every factoid that you receive. So that's why I'm doing it for you. But yeah, let's see what else he has to say. Maybe the first article is still correct. Let's see. And attention spans, once lost, don't go to Mars, never to return, unless you get really, really lucky and the International Space Force commissions a rocket to rescue you. Rather, they need 30 seconds or less to refresh themselves, and they are back, strong as ever, ready to raise your consciousness still further, hour after hour. A quick stretch, a chance to ask questions, something new to look at. Many quick and easy pivots in content can refresh the attention span. Attention spans also depend on the nature of the material those brains are attempting to absorb. Most people can sit spellbound through a 2-hour thriller movie, but struggle to read more than a handful pages in Immanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. Who knew? Online, attention spans do seem to have become shorter. 7 to 10 minutes seems about right. But you should consider the jury out on attention span lengths for now, at least until more research is done, and we nail that pesky little factoid down for good. By then, it will be shorter anyway. But the big question remains. What about the pandemic and all this time we've spent online? Have those twin changes in our daily habits affected our attention spans, most likely for the worse? The quick answer is no. What has changed is not our attention spans, but our ability to engage with new ideas. We're stressed out and information overloaded, and that's not changing anytime soon. Rather, the pandemic accelerated that state of affairs. It's harder to get our attention in the first place. Stress will do that to you. On the other hand, once you get our attention, we'll binge watch The Crown with the best of them. That's really interesting. Here's an analogy for how it works. Imagine you had a budget of $10 per day to spend on food and toiletries. You'd probably run through it every day and earlier rather than later. It would make sense to spend it in chunks so that you could regularly afford to buy bigger things rather than dribble it all away on 50-cent items. So buying things in bulk, you're saying. Some days you might not buy food at all, perhaps buying a big tub of shampoo one day and Oreos the next day. Don't judge me. Imagine if you had that same $10 to spend to feed and clean 2 people. How much harder would it seem to make the money go the distance? If you were in the unenviable position right now of trying to hold and capture the attention spans of one group or another, good luck. Tell stories. Change things up every 10 minutes or so, and understand that it's hard to get those nervous, overloaded pandemic minds to come to roost long enough to see your great stuff. Be compassionate and pay attention to your storytelling craft. What still grabs and holds people is powerful stories on ancient themes like identity, change, and revenge. Our brains still work. They're just stressed out.